Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week to talk a little bit about some basketball real quick at the top of the show. The basketball season finally began last week, and I was curious just what we learned from that first week. I mean, I got to see Barron County play Bowling Green. And then I got to see Glasgow play Greenwood. And then Friday night, we had a couple of 15th district games. Barron hosted Monroe, and Glasgow played Allen County Scottsville. And I just was curious. I mean, what did you see from the first week of the high school basketball season there, John?
Well, what do you want to talk about first, boys or girls?
Well, let's go ahead and get the boys out of the way. How about that?
Okay. Well, Bowling Green is the prohibited favorite to win the region.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that coming in, but my goodness, they played without two of their probable starters against Barron County and looked real good. Then they played Greenwood the next night, I think it was, and beat them at, 87-48? And then Greenwood was supposed to be one of the teams that may threaten them in the 14th district. No. I mean, Bowling Green is, as of right now, and we've not seen Warren Central, they're 20 points better than everybody else in the region, I think.
They've you knew coming into the year with all their starters back, and losing in the finals of the region the last, I think, 3 years, that they were sitting on a monster year.
Yeah,
and you add DG to the mix, and they're defensively, they just smother you. I mean, and they got just enough shooters, and they got length and so forth like that. They are going to be very difficult to beat. Tough start for Barron, having to start with them. 65-40, and Barron's considered a top 5 team in the region. So was Greenwood, and just neither team very competitive against them. And, in fact, Barron's first 2 games were Harlan County, which is an unusual situation. Harlan County called down to Warren on the day of the game. Now, Harlan County's 3.5 hours away.
Yeah.
And they are, if they're not the favorite to win the 13th, they are one of the favorites. And you wouldn't drive 3.5 hours to play unless you were good. So they worked out a game on that day and defeated the Trojans 63-51. So, Barron's 2 losses are to quality teams.
Yeah. And
then Barron bounced back with a good win against Monroe, 70-45. And Aiden Niken is, started off the year well. He's averaged, I think, 23 points a game and 6.5 rebounds, and had 30-something against Monroe.
Yeah, hit some threes against Monroe as well.
Hit some threes, but it's been a tough start for Barron. They've played good competition, but they need to shoot the ball better. That's the concern coming into the year. And after the first week, it's still a concern. Consistent outside shooting is a must in today's game. And if you're going to knock off the heavyweights, you got to make those shots. And so it remains to be seen is can Barron improve that part of their game. Now they got a couple good performances as the week went on by 2 sophomores that have not played much. Aiden Miller played really well against Harlan County. He's a 6'4" sophomore. He had, I think, 14 points. And then Eli Brooks, a sophomore, who I think Eli has grown like 5 inches since last year. He's about 6'6", 6'7" now.
Yeah, he's a good, lanky-looking kid.
Yeah, he had 9 points against Monroe. But really, for Barron, the guards, I think Tate Pointer shot the ball better against Monroe. He's 2 out of 5 from 3, but they just need better outside shooting. And it's early; it's just 3 games of the year, but that's something that I think needs to pick up for the Trojans if they want to get to the level where they have a chance against the Bowling Greens or Warren Central, whatever. Knocking down those shots is a must.
Yeah, and this week's going to be interesting for them. They're playing at Russell County tonight. I would say that's a pretty good game for them in terms of getting better, getting to work on a team. They should be favored against Russell County, I would say.
They will be.
Then they're at Ohio County. Ohio is usually pretty good at boys basketball. I don't know how much of a threat they are in that 3rd region, but they usually have a pretty decent program. And then they're at Allen County at the end of the week, which is the one to circle because they have set themselves as the two better teams in the district as of right now.
Well, you have to understand that this year, unlike the past, because of the COVID situation, the only games that count in your district standings is the first game.
Yeah, the district got to get together and make that decision before the season started, right?
So basically it's 3 games. And the reason why they did that, the first one is you're not guaranteed because of COVID to play each other twice. You could get wiped out. So it's the first game that's important. The most important, I guess you could say that. So that's a huge game with Allen. Allen started off. I think Allen is 2-1 maybe.
Yeah, they lost in triple overtime.
Lost in triple overtime to Greenwood. I listened to some of that game. Shirley was tremendous. I think he had 40.
Yeah.
So that I look forward to that game. Glasgow boys, on the other hand, they started off 0-2. But if I'm a Glasgow fan, I would be pretty optimistic about it. They played 2 good teams. Greenwood and ACS are 2 teams in the top 6 in the region, and they played both of them well. They lost 78-68 to Greenwood and 68-59 to Allen, and the games were competitive. And I said all along, I think the pressure is off Glasgow, and all they got to do is play and improve. And you want to win, but how you play matters, and I think they played pretty well. Sam Bowling is the kid who has the most experience coming back from last year.
Yeah, I think he had 29 against Allen County.
He had 22 and 26, I think.
Yeah, okay.
In both games, and he's tall, lanky, very athletic, and played well. Jackson Poland had 2 nice games. He had 18 and 14. Mm-hmm. And they were in both games down the stretch. So from the Glasgow perspective, I think they played pretty well.
One of the things that I thought about whenever I saw Glasgow play Greenwood was Willett said when I did the preseason interview with him that he got to coach this group as JV last year a couple of times. And Bowling and Poland both got to play some varsity games last year because of the injuries to Kirkpatrick and Jaden Franklin during the course of the year. So they got varsity experience. Serwinski did a little bit. John Carter Myers did a little bit. But he said these guys as a group, they were a lot of fun to coach. And I can see why. They're very loose, and I don't mean like wild loose. I mean, they're just fun and emotional and loose. They don't feel any pressure, as you were talking about. There's no pressure on them. It's a bunch of juniors, so they've played together a lot. They got to play behind a group that had played together a lot, so they got a lot of experience playing against good competition. And so they're not afraid of the moment. Their biggest problem really is they don't have much size, and that kind of hurts them as they go along. But really, in both those games, they shot the outside shot pretty well overall.
They did.
And it's kind of they have the reverse issue kind of Barron in a way. Barron's got some good inside size, with Aiden Nyken, and you mentioned Brooks and Miller coming in. Glasgow doesn't have much inside size, but they got the outside shooting and good-looking ball handlers too. And they're really scrappy. So, they play tonight at Russellville in All-A. I figure that's a good game for them to try to win.
I think they will win.
And I would say, just when you look at they're going to be playing this All-A tournament this week, there's a good chance for them to get 3 wins this week, probably.
Maybe
in the All-A tournament. Clinton County's out there somewhere.
I think Clinton is the favorite by far, and I think Metcalf is not bad. But I think Glasgow stacks up with everybody else. Other than I would make Clinton the favorite against them if they get that far. But I definitely expect them to go down and beat Russell.
Yeah. So,
Russellville. I'm sorry.
So anybody who was thinking to themselves, well, this is just going to be a down year for Glasgow, their win total may not be 20 games, but I don't see, outside of maybe Bowling Green, maybe Warren Central, I don't see, and we don't know about Warren Central, they haven't played yet, but I really don't see anybody blowing them out when you look at their schedule. I figure they're going to be in every game, and they're going to cause some teams that are favorites above them in the region some trouble, I do believe.
I agree.
Meanwhile, on the girls' side, Barron County put itself as the number 1 team. Now, there's kind of an asterisk, I guess you would put, next to their win against Bowling Green, because Bowling Green came in as a favorite. But the only asterisk being that there were a couple of players for Bowling Green that weren't there, and Meadow Tisdale got injured during the course of the game. But scratch that otherwise, Barron played extremely well in the first week of the season, I thought.
No question about it. They've played better than Bowling Green boys, and Barron girls played the best in the first week for sure. I mean, they knocked off Bowling Green 53-41, and that was a consistent lead for the most part. 8, 10, 12-point lead for most of the game. And,
they opened on a 7-0 run and never trailed.
Yeah, and Bowling Green was considered the overwhelming favorite. I've said it on this air that Bowling Green is the overwhelming favorite in the girls and boys. Mm-hmm. But we got to put there's a big but to it now. After watching Bowling Green play, first of all, Shelton will not be back because she's at Warren Central.
Yes, that's right.
So that's a Division I player that I did not know they had lost at one time. She's gone. Mm-hmm. Now, their injured players will be back. Gray, their point guard, who tore ACL last year, will be back sometime in a few weeks. And what I saw against Barron, they need some ball handlers desperately.
There in the third quarter before Tisdale got hurt, she became their primary ball handler, which is not really what you want her to do.
No. So she's out. They've got another guard out, and they say they have a transfer from Warren East who's not eligible until March. Yeah, but they're very high on.
Yeah, Janaea Bailey. She played some as an eighth grade. Well, actually, played quite a bit as an eighth grader.
So we'll see if they can put all these kind of parts together and get back to where they're capable. But right now, Barron has kind of placed their flag in the ground as the best team, and I was really impressed with Barron against not only Bowling Green, but they just blew out Monroe 62-30, and I thought Monroe would be more competitive, and that game was over before
they tipped it. It was over.
It was over.
Actually, I guess they flipped the coin and it was over.
Yeah, and it wasn't competitive, and I thought the game would be a little competitive because I like some of the athletes I see with Monroe, but the game wasn't competitive. And Macy Lockhart has started off really well. She's a sophomore, played a lot as a freshman. She's at 12 and 14, and of course, her mother played for me, and Amanda Galloway, who's one of my better players I've ever played. So I've always had a keen interest in watching her, and she's really improved her shooting. And, of course, Raven Ennis had a big year last year, and she has continued 12 and 16 and shooting a three. One thing that Barron does real well is they can really shoot it.
Yeah.
Addison London, who's a first year that she's really contributed a lot. She had 10 the first game. Katie Murphy, the point guard, 10 and 7's played well. And then they've got Emma Hughes is the only senior. She's done well, and then they've got this slew of young players, eighth graders and freshmen that I told you there's players that people have not really seen a lot that that looks like to me are going to help. I think
one of those being Abby Varney. She's played quite a bit.
Abby
in the
Varney
first
is
couple of
correct. She looks like she knows what she's doing. So Barron is going to be a very difficult team for people in this region to beat, especially if you can't score.
Right.
And there is a lot of teams that cannot score because Barron can score, and if you can't score, I don't think you can beat them.
One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting.
Now, I will say Warren Central, Warren East have not played yet, so we'll.
Yeah. I do believe after watching that first week, and like you said, we still don't, like we mentioned on the boys' side, we still don't know anything about Warren Central because both their teams have been out because of COVID-related issues. Yeah. Same thing for Warren East. We expect Warren East to be good. I mean, you're bringing back Lucy Patterson, who's a dynamic player, and they have, traditionally, in recent years, their softball players weren't also playing basketball. That's not been the case the last 2 or 3 years. They've gotten more of those girls to come out and play. So their basketball team has obviously gotten better. Yeah, those girls are good athletes. I mean, Lucy Patterson's one of those. She plays three sports, I think.
Took Barron a incredible comeback to beat them last year in a regional tournament.
Right. So we don't know about them yet. We figure Warren Central will be, with Shelton there. Plus, we saw last year they had some good players. Yep. They were finally starting to come together, which I was – I was happy for Joe Hood in that situation. He's not the coach anymore. Anthony Hickey is now. But so we know that they have some folks who can really get up and down the floor. I don't know about their shooting. Warren East's shooting is pretty good, so they're going to be difficult to deal with. But just right now, the combination of what Barron does defensively, which is give you nothing easy, as we saw. I mean, they have no one close to the size of Lynn Kayla James, I think is her name, the big girl
6'3".
for Bowling Green. They asked Emmett Hughes and Macy Lockhart and all to defend her. I mean, she got her points, but they did a good job of, pushing her around and getting physical with her and just trying to keep her off the boards. I still think, depending on injuries and, as the season progresses, I still think Bowling Green will be the team to beat just because we know that they've got players coming back that'll be a tough matchup. And one of the things about this season is no preseason, delayed start, practices erratic. We had the holidays right before the season started. I think fatigue was one of those things I saw in some of the early games, just people not being in game shape yet.
That improved.
Yeah, and so all that's going to come along.
It should improve. I say it improve. It normally improves, but you don't know about quarantines.
That's a good point.
So you don't really know.
Yeah,
I think Glasgow girls got off to a good start.
Yes. They were also, I think, better than people expected.
I agree.
With only one player back. I mean, Ansley Adwell's a good player, but none of those other players had much experience at all.
They split. They lost to Greenwood 47-43, in which they were down 17 and got it within a basket at the end. In fact, had a steal to tie it, but then kind of lost it after the steal. Mm-hmm. And then got a big win over Allen County Scottsville. Yeah. And I think it is critical in girls to stay out of the bottom.
Yeah.
Because if you play Barron, you're probably not going to win. So you got to, to get to that 2-3, and it looks like to me ACS has probably sealed their fate.
They probably have. They opened with 2 losses.
That's correct, and they have Barron Friday. They'll have to upset Barron. So Glasgow did it's a big win, and Ansley Adwell is we expect her to play well.
Yeah.
I think she's at 11 points both games. Had I think 11 rebounds one game. Mia Cassidy had a monster game against Greenwood. She had 17 points, hit 5 threes to spur their comeback. I think Ashton Botts.
Yeah,
she had the big 3 against Allen County to take the lead with like a minute to go.
Yeah, it's 25 seconds. I think
25 seconds ago that got them over here. And Chloe Hales played well.
Yep.
I think she had 9 points against Allen, and she had 11 rebounds against the Greenwood. So, they have shown that that they're going to be competitive. Mm-hmm. And of course, they got a Division I player too, Ansley Adwell.
Yeah.
So the key is can the other players who do not have that experience step up? And it looks like after the first 2 games that they've got the makings of a team that could be very competitive.
Yeah, one of the downsides for Allen County in playing those 2 district games right out of the gate is they didn't have Chloe Cook. She didn't play in either of those games or against Greenwood on Saturday.
Yep.
So that's a big loss for them. And as you said, that kind of sealed their fate as far as the district tournament because as you were talking about earlier.
Unless they upset Barron.
Yeah, well.
I mean, but
I guess it could happen.
It can happen because just look at the last couple of years in the district tournaments and things like that.
Yeah.
Allen, who by all rights should have beat Barron 2 years ago, took a 3 in the first round of the district from
England.
From England to win, and then they had Barron on the ropes several times, low-scoring games. They kind of, for some reason, I don't know if they scheme Barron well or match up well, but they've not knocked them off.
Right. They have threatened them.
But they have threatened them.
Well, and I do think they are probably a better team with Chloe Cook on the court. She definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, no question about that.
Anyway, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, for the first time ever, the National Football League had 7 teams in each conference qualify for the playoffs. So that meant 3 games on Saturday and 3 games on Sunday. And I've got to tell you, I actually quite enjoyed that. I don't know about you. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's not going away.
Yeah, once they've done it, they're going to do it forever now, aren't they?
Yeah, and those guys are getting paid. So, yeah,
Right.
I mean, they are. That's not going away. I mean, that was tremendous.
Yeah.
It was so good that people have forgotten there's a national title game tonight.
Yes, I would say that the weekend of NFL playoff football, especially some of the games were a couple of the games were really exciting.
Yeah, it's taken away a lot of the luster from college, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, and look, I've always thought it was kind of dumb the way they've done this college football championship tonight, where it's basically it's a week and a half after they played the semifinals. They shouldn't wait that long.
Yep.
I mean, that allows other people to slip in the gap there and overshadow you.
Yeah. No, the NFL was tremendous this weekend.
Yep.
I wouldn't say all the games are great, but it's just, football all day, Saturday and Sunday. They've really had the whole sports landscape to themselves.
Mm-hmm. They did.
I mean, you had college basketball, but that don't hold a candle to the NFL in terms of ratings.
Yeah. Well, and right now
especially when you can't go watch it anyway. It's,
right.
College sports, the missing of crowds has made a big difference.
Yes. I was thinking about that when I was at the high school games last week, is the absence of the student sections, and how that is affecting the games. Now, one of the things about the National Football League without the fans in the stands, I've actually enjoyed the ability to hear the discussions on the football field. Now, they got to catch the profanities when people are yelling and screaming at each other for the broadcast, and mostly they're effective at that. But I've kind of enjoyed just the general conversations that you hear that's not between opposing teams that you can hear on this broadcast. I've actually enjoyed that. But I would say that in the lack of the student sections, especially in college basketball and maybe even in high school basketball, it is noticeable because that is a big part of the atmosphere of basketball games at those levels.
And I agree. I mean, that's just part of the just kind of part of the atmosphere. It's the fans. It makes it's part of the culture, I guess, of high school and college sports.
Yeah, but back to the NFL. So there were some things. Let's just start with the Bills.
Okay.
All right. There were parts of the Bills' defense that I wasn't impressed by, but Josh Allen impressed me even more by the time I got finished watching that game than I was before with him, especially two plays where he's running, he's escaping, extending the play, and he manages to throw passes like on the sideline that were perfect passes.
Yeah, his accuracy has improved tremendously. He's always been a great athlete. In fact, he leads, it may surprise people, he leads the NFL in the last 2 years in rushing touchdowns over Lamar.
Yeah.
But his accuracy with his arm, he's gone from 58% to about 70%.
Yeah, because he was a big guy, athletic guy with a big arm, so he could chuck it down the field. He could run away from people, surprisingly, a lot of times. But that's the thing he's gotten better at, is extending that play and making that pass, sort of like a Patrick Mahomes or an Aaron Rodgers, usually speaking.
You named them. Those are the two quarterbacks, probably the only two that you would say that are better than him.
Yeah.
He's probably the third best quarterback in the league now.
Yeah, I mean, and look, people were ready to put him on a shelf after that first season, but he's just he's a product of also wanting to be better, and people just miss the fact that sometimes people have to work to get better, and that's what he's done.
He really has. Well, he's been coached well too. But yeah, Buffalo's for real. I mean, they are a legitimate threat. I don't know what the odds are to win the to win the Super Bowl, but I would probably put them Green Bay, because I think Green Bay has the best chance of being in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and then Kansas City, and then Buffalo.
Yeah, I think right now the Las Vegas odds are Kansas City's 1, Buffalo's 2, and Green Bay is 3.
Right, I think Kansas City's a favorite, but I would just think Green Bay. I just think they're coming out.
Yeah.
And Kansas City is, in my opinion, is going to go through Buffalo.
Yes, you said last week you were looking forward to the AFC side of the playoffs versus the NFC side of the playoffs. And that was certainly borne out over the weekend, with the exception probably of the Browns-Steelers game.
Boy, that was a unusual game.
Yeah, I mean,
to
say the least.
The fall behind. It's disappointing if you're a Pittsburgh fan, because you felt like you never really were in it. Which they weren't.
No,
they were behind in less than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
First play of the game, they after the kickoff, they snapped it over the quarterback's head for a touchdown for Cleveland, and they were behind 28-0. And Pittsburgh is so similar to how New England was last year. Pittsburgh started off 11-0, and I think New England last year started off like 9-0 or something like that, 10-1. And by the end of the year, it became apparent that neither team wasn't all that good. They had taken advantage of probably weaker competition, and then they just had some injuries, and then just got exposed. And for whatever happened, whatever reason, Pittsburgh went from a team that had a pretty strong rushing attack early in the year to they didn't even try. And from the middle on, they made this effort for whatever reason just to throw it. I think Roethlisberger threw it 70 times yesterday, and he can't move anymore. He can't get away from He can't get away from pressure. He never can run just to even to extend the play. He can't do it anymore. And he just kind of looks like a player that's probably, in my opinion, he's 38. Who do you think looks better and athletic now, Brady at 43 or Roethlisberger at 38? I don't even think it's close. He looks like he's done to me.
You know what that game reminded me of last night? It reminded me of the end of Dan Marino's career in Miami.
Can't move.
A big guy with a big arm, but really can't do the intelligence is there, but the physical ability is not really there
just
anymore.
Can't. He can't. You have to be able to move some, and he can't move. And consequently, if you can't move, then sometimes you're throwing it too early just because you don't want to get hit.
Yeah.
And that leads to interceptions. And the only way that it's ever going to work, in my opinion, with him is they got to change how they play.
It makes me think of Peyton Manning with the Broncos in the sense that they knew he couldn't do certain things anymore, so they ran the ball. They played great defense. That Steelers team kind of went the other direction.
Yeah, they put more burden on a player who just really can't do it anymore.
Yeah,
and that was something that jumped out. The Titans, I think they may have lost to one of the hottest teams in the league. Baltimore's hot, but again, it's no disgrace. They were competitive, but I do think it's legitimate criticism of their coach Vrabel. I was a little surprised if you watched the game that when they were down a touchdown and inside of 9 or 10 minutes, and they had 4th and 1. In Baltimore territory. Mm-hmm. And with the rushing attack that they have, they decided to punt. And the time they got it back, they were down 2 touchdowns. And I thought that was a mistake. I said it at the time. It surprised me because you got Derrick Henry. And not only have Derrick Henry, you have play action off Derrick Henry. You have read options with Tannehill.
Which has been very effective this year.
Very effective. And they didn't do that. And that was a mistake. And Mike Tomlin did the same thing last night when Pittsburgh got back in the game and they got it within 2 touchdowns, and they also, with like 9 minutes to go, had a 4th and 1 and didn't go for it either. And I'm thinking, man.
One of the things. So in the game with the Colts and the Bills, the Colts got the touchdown, and they went for the 2-point conversion, I think it was, and no, they went for it on 4th down instead of taking the points. That's what it was. And sometimes I think coaches incidentally signify to their teams, we're not as good as the team we're playing. Them not taking the points right there said he didn't trust his team to be able to stay in the game. Score
with Buffalo.
Yeah. And so they needed to get up 2 touchdowns or whatever, get a touchdown right there. And to me, the Colts defense was playing well enough that you could take the points there and kind of play that in a more traditional sense.
I agree.
Go back to Pittsburgh. They got the touchdown. They could have gone for 2 to get within 11, all right, before that 4th down play you're talking about. And they didn't go for the 2. They kicked the extra point. The difference between 12 and 13 is nothing, all right? The difference between 11 and 12 is actually huge.
Yeah, because
if you can get a touchdown and a field goal, 2-point conversion. Yeah, you still got to score 3 times effectively, but you only have to kind of score twice in a way.
Yeah.
And then the Titans were kind of the same way. They made this – it's like they couldn't run the ball. It was the reverse of last year's playoff game between these two teams. Last year, it was like the Titans had the Ravens figured out, and the Ravens got frustrated and started making, I thought, dumb decisions last year. This year, it was reverse in this game. It's like the Ravens had the Titans figured out, and they didn't have a secondary plan for how they were going to deal with it.
I didn't like the Titans going into this game for one big reason is that Tennessee plays real well as an underdog and on the road.
Yeah.
And they have not been near as good, in my opinion. I don't have the stats with me, playing at home.
Right.
For some reason, they take this different. They're almost a different team on the road, and And Baltimore came in angry, upset over what happened earlier in the year, last year and earlier in the year. Tennessee knocked them off last year in the playoffs, and then they came in and there was that controversy of Tennessee stomping on their logo and doing all that stuff, and then winning. And man, I just thought that the game was awful ripe, set up just right for Baltimore.
Well, and you know what? Here's one thing that also happened. Lamar Jackson did not play very well in the first quarter, and the Titans let him off the hook. And then he kind of got calmed down or whatever the deal was. I mean, that first interception he threw was just a bad pass.
Right.
And then, he just kind of made some bad plays.
He played like Lamar. He actually used a God-given strength.
Well, and that run in the second quarter was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to use his legs. That's why he's great. Don't don't take away a weapon just because you have to prove that you're a thrower.
Yeah.
Use what you got. And he did. And he played good.
Well, and, on that play, what was that, 3rd and long, and the defense was set up in such a way that he really just had to, once he got through the line of scrimmage, he only had to outrun one guy. It was that Kevin Byard. And I felt, how bad that guy must feel. He's like, okay, I know he's fast, and he's coming like you would traditionally come to make that tackle on a dude. And Lamar Jackson, it's just a yard's difference. I mean, he almost touched him.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's just when you watch a play like that, it's like it's amazing how fast he is.
He is.
But back to the thing, the Titans let him off the hook. They had an opportunity in that first quarter to probably put the Ravens in a position where it would have been more like last year's playoff game, and they just didn't get it done.
Yeah, you need to make Baltimore play from behind if you
can. Meanwhile, going back to, that talking about a matchup coming up this week, I think that Saints-Buccaneers matchup. 3rd
time a charm.
It will be a very interesting game. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think both those teams, the Buccaneers won a game that they should have won, but it was not easy for them. The Saints won a game that they should have won. It was kind of easy for them because the Bears are just so inept offensively.
They are.
But the Saints weren't really good in the game in a lot of ways. And so it's going to be interesting to see which way it breaks when they meet each other. The Rams won a game against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are kind of like the Steelers. They were not as good as their record.
They fell apart at the end of the year.
Yeah. But the Rams, I really like what they're doing right now. I mean, they could put –
They're not beating Green Bay.
They're not beating Green Bay, but they have – I think we talked about this earlier in the season. They kind of went back to whenever they were.
Now, defensively, they're very good.
They probably have the best defense.
I think you're right. So that will cause some problems at Green Bay, but they can't score.
No.
And if they knock around Aaron Rodgers, that's a big plus for them. But but I don't see a West Coast team going up and beating them in 20-degree weather in Green Bay.
No, I don't either.
It's the best home field advantage in the playoffs. There's no fans there.
Yeah.
But there's going to be weather there.
Yeah. Green Bay's the fans have nothing to do with why it's hard to play in Green Bay.
No, it's having good teams, Aaron Rodgers, and the cold weather will be a factor, I think, in this game.
Yeah, and I actually think the Packers' defense is probably better than people realize, and they have a balanced offense, which is something they haven't always had while Rodgers has been in Green Bay.
Right.
And that's going to make a big difference. So, I'm kind of looking forward to those games. On the AFC side, it'll be interesting to see, how the Browns pan out the next week. Because they've done something that the Steelers didn't do. They were like, hey, we have good running backs and a good enough offensive line. Let's give it to those dudes, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, Kansas City and Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I think Cleveland
it'll be a shootout.
I think that will be a much better game. I thought the early line was like 10 points, and I go, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That's way too
50 to 40 maybe.
I mean, that's way too high of a line. I think Cleveland will be very competitive because they have a style that will be a factor against Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then you got Buffalo and who do the Bills play?
They play the Ravens.
That's Buffalo and the Ravens. 2 seriously good games.
Yeah, I think we will have 3 good games.
I do too.
I don't think that Rams Packers game will be a good game. It may be interesting.
It could be, but I don't think so. I agree with you. I think that's the one game that I'm a little dubious about.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, this is our college basketball section, but we're going to talk about the women's game first for a couple of reasons. One is we have 2 really good women's programs in the state. Louisville's ranked number 2 right now. Somebody is calling in. They disagree with John's assessment of the last series of NFL games we were talking about. They want to let him know that they are disappointed with his thoughts on the Packers-Rams game. I'm sure it's a Rams fan somewhere. No, not really. Anyway, Louisville is the number 2 ranked team in the nation. And
for real.
And they are for real. They've got really good players.
Deep. I mean, they've got really good guards. A freshman, I think her name is Haley Van. I forgot her last name. Van whatever. She's a heck of a player.
Yeah. And then the Kentucky women are good as well.
They are.
But the SEC is just apparently stacked right now with quality women's basketball.
Yeah,
programs.
I mean, UK lost to South Carolina yesterday, and both, South Carolina I think is 5th in the nation, and they've gone through COVID a little bit. I thought Kentucky was probably beat them just because I don't think South Carolina had practiced like three straight days beforehand, but they're good. Texas A&M is very good. Tennessee's okay, not great.
And and
Arkansas is good.
Mississippi State earlier in the week,
Mississippi State's
which I think
good.
is ranked number 15 or so.
So
right now.
Kentucky is good. The Howard girl is an All-American.
Yeah,
they're really good. But I think Louisville's the tops. Good news for Western women. They got the Raneem El-Jadawi is back. She hasn't played yet, and they went down to La Tech and got a split, which was I think would surprise you a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact, their leading scorers on Saturday were the 2 freshman guards.
Yeah. They are looking better for the future. This year is still a bit of a hump year, I guess, for them in a lot of ways.
I think Louisville has, a legitimate shot at being a Final Four team. UK, I'm not sure. I mean, Howard is a big-time player, but she kind of plays when she wants to play. Louisville is deep. I mean, deep, and outside of one game, hadn't been really challenged.
I'm a little bit fascinated to see how it pans out because, like I said, the SEC has, 6 or 7 teams that are quality teams this year. You mentioned Tennessee. They're probably close to the bottom of that list, and they're not a bad team at all.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how the grind and the other factors with this year's schedule pans out on the back end of this for the teams like Kentucky, maybe Mississippi State, even Texas A&M for that matter, who are probably that second level after maybe South Carolina there. Meanwhile, on the men's side, as I was making the show notes for this show, John, it dawned on me that John Calipari has absolutely flipped upside down your general theory about coaches and knowing who to play and when to play them.
Yeah, I've always said that most coaches tend to know who to play. They may not play well, but you generally play the right players for the most part. You may disagree on how much you play them, but most coaches, they may not have the right system. They may not blah, 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 but they generally play the right players. John Calipari was playing the wrong players, remarkably. Really, his stubbornness not to play Dante Allen probably cost Kentucky at least minimum 4 wins. And he wasn't even getting it. He didn't even play against Louisville. He had the old DMP, did not play against several schools. And, of course, there was a public outcry of the fan base that, to play him. He's a Kentucky kid. He can shoot. Give him a chance.
Right.
And most of the time, that's just, people talking with their heart, but they were right. He is a shooter, a great shooter on a team that couldn't shoot. And since he was put into the game, Kentucky has not lost. And that was the first game was last week against Mississippi State, and he had 23, I think, in overtime, and like 6 threes. And
the first game he was put into was the one Calipari got tossed out of.
Never came out either after Cal got thrown out. He played the rest of the way, and then had double figures against Vanderbilt, another win, and then the win at Florida. And what it did was it just completely opened the floor for other players. Their 3 best players that are now have been the guards, Askew and Mintz. And I don't know where you play some of these NBA guards with that team because to me, Dante Allen, Askew, and Mintz, they have to play.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you play. Terrence Clark has been hurt. He's supposed to be an NBA player. And B.J. Boston is supposedly a lottery pick, but I don't know what you do with them.
Yeah.
I mean, B.J. Boston played a little bit better the last game. I think he had 13 points, but he's not really a shooter. The other big addition was Keon Brooks is back. His first game was against Florida. He really helps them too, but he's a 4 or 5. But the remarkable thing about UK, and I guess Cal kind of, I know he hates to do it, kind of has to eat his words a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I would be wondering, why couldn't I see this?
Yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, today's game, you have to have shooters.
Yeah.
And their best shooter, a 6'7" kid from Kentucky, was not playing. And I think it's a legitimate question on what are you looking at?
One of the things, there are a couple of things, as we've talked about, and I think Calipari has basically said this before. Ironically enough, he's looking for people who can play defense at the level that he expects them to play defense to start with. And maybe he just didn't feel like, maybe in practice Dante Allen doesn't do that. And you just never know what goes on in practice.
Right.
And so maybe he just doesn't do that in practice, or he doesn't have what looks like they need in practice. But he's a guy you put out there in the game, and he's just a gamer, And so maybe that's the thing, is in practice it doesn't show up in that way. And then the other thing is Calipari's got to protect his recruiting, and part of protecting that recruiting is recruiting these guys who are going to be 1 year and then going to
these
the
NBA players. But like I told you off air, I'm not for sure Dante Allen does not have the skill set now to play in the NBA over these other ones, because
he certainly has a roster
shooter.
Spot.
That's
he may not be a standout, he may not be a star, but he's got a roster spot.
That's
in the
exactly
NBA.
right. He has the skills set now of modern day basketball.
Yeah, and they play Alabama tomorrow night. They are both undefeated in conference, and it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because Alabama kind of
they're okay.
They're okay, but one of the things we've seen this season is that if you've got at least some experience coming back, that seems to be beneficial because of the way the season is shaped up.
Right.
And that's probably why they are okay. They're talent-wise, they're not better than Kentucky, but they may just be bringing back the right mixture of people that's allowed them to get off a decent start.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Meanwhile, Louisville is
in the top 25.
Top 25.
The one loss was at Wisconsin. They got destroyed, but that's after a 2.5-week COVID quarantine and loss. And
I think they had even a player or two out for that game against
Wisconsin. They had several players out, yeah. And they're led by their two guards, David Johnson and Carlik Jones, and they haven't played perfect. They haven't played. Sometimes it's not the best looking style that I've seen, but they've lost one game and are undefeated in ACC.
Yeah.
And you can only see them improving as year goes on, because they are playing a ton of young kids, and some of their injured players will be coming back in another month or less. So, from a Louisville perspective, I think you have to be pretty happy with them.
Yeah, it's looking like a team that has a bright future ahead of it in this season.
And Western, the thing about the toppers, I think they found out how hard it is in this to win these back-to-back games.
Yeah.
It's like in baseball, the percentage of teams that sweep doubleheaders in baseball it's less than 50%. Most doubleheaders end in splits.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see that a lot in Conference USA. When you have to go on the road and play the same team back-to-back, I think you'll see a lot of splits if the talent is equal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just mentally it's hard.
Right.
To come back after you win and then come right back and play the same team. It's mentally hard. And I think the good news about Western is I really think they're legitimately good, and I think they can beat arguably anybody in the country on a given night.
Right.
The frustrating part about the Toppers is for the last couple of years, they just oftentimes to me, they don't have the focus sometimes necessary to win. They get off to horrible starts. Just like they got behind who was it Charlotte?
Yeah,
this
Charlotte.
Weekend. They got behind on the second part of the doubleheader. They got behind like 27-8 or something like that. Just like
Louisiana Tech this
Louisiana
weekend.
Tech, yeah. And go. Well, I mean,
they give up a 20-0 run in the first half.
And that's happened too many times in the last 2 years with junior and senior teams that it just tells me that at times they just don't have the leadership on the floor, maybe too many laid-back people that can happen to. I mean, it happens too many times.
Yeah, I think was Charlotte the weekend before. I think they were down 17 in the second half,
right,
on the road.
And that is, to me, that's just one player or two players who just, don't allow that to happen. And it doesn't seem like that just may be a weakness that they have. It is what it is when you have a team that way, but it's not the coach's responsibility to make sure you're ready to, they can prepare you, but are you mentally ready? Well, that comes from within. And then sometimes it seems like that's one thing that's kept Western from being, 27-4, as opposed to 19-10 or whatever. That right there.
Well, I do think there was a point in that game with La Tech on Saturday where it felt like, I think Stansbury called a timeout with 10 minutes with the run at 10-0 for Louisiana Tech in that first half. It seems like to me the message probably should have been, put the ball inside to Bassey. I don't care how long it takes. And if you don't, you can come sit over here and I'll find somebody who will. Because he went a long time without the offense going through
27 the night before.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you've got that guy on your team, I don't care what else is going on. When things start going south, you feed him the ball.
Well, he is good enough to stop teams from having 10-12-0 runs against you.
Yeah.
If you use him right.
On both ends of the floor.
And it seems like Western gets a little bit too loose at times with their offense. And they forget they got a 7-foot dominant force inside. I think his only two shots in the last 10 minutes of the game the other night were 2 threes. And, that can't happen.
No. And I do feel like that's got to be somewhat on Stansbury to refocus them in a timeout like that.
Perhaps, yeah.
But you're right. When the game's just going on, somebody on the floor has to be able to do that.
I think it's I would think maybe Coach could maybe design a few sets that need to go there. Now, don't get me wrong. If you score 27 one night and you play the same team the next night, the other team's going to try to take it away.
Yeah,
okay.
they might have seen you before.
That's right. And I think sometimes it's point guard play too, or strong guard play that makes, concerted effort to get somebody the ball that way too.
Yeah. All right, this Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we made our predictions about the national title game last week, score-wise, but we may have been premature because we forgot the golden rule in the age of COVID, and that is anything can happen from day to day. And as of right now, I think we're not even sure who's going to be playing for Ohio State tonight when they play Alabama.
Is the quarterback playing?
I mean, I would guess yes. The answer is going to be yes.
There was rumors that some defensive linemen that could be out, right?
Yes, that's right.
That really hurts them.
Yeah, I mean, because Fields is good.
He's got to be still banged up. He cannot be 100%.
No,
after the shot he took last week.
Yeah, but you're right. If there's any deficiency in Ohio State's defense from what we've seen of Alabama's offense this year, they're toast.
Yeah.
I mean, because Alabama, Devontae Smith got the Heisman. He's probably, I don't know if he's the best football player in the country, but he's the most dynamic offensively at the moment because once the ball hits his hands, it's pretty much over with. And, as you pointed out, Mac Jones, who I kept calling Generic Jones last week, and I know he's a good quarterback.
He is.
But my point being that it seems like they can just plug anybody into that offense right now and it cooks. If anybody's out for Ohio State on their defensive side, it's going to be an absolute bloodletting.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's not going to be low scoring. I mean,
no.
I think minimum you've got to score 35.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a 28, 24, 20. I don't see that.
It's not that.
I think I can see a 38, 31, or even higher type of game. It just depends on kind of if it's a blowout, it'll be Alabama blowing out Ohio State.
Yeah.
But I do think it's just hard to tell until they take the field. The health of Ohio State. Ohio State dominated Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were really impressive. Dominated. Now, the question is, will they bounce off that? Did they play so well sometimes when you put a supreme effort up, it's hard to come right back with another one.
Well, especially if they were emotionally motivated for that game.
That's correct. And you go, well, how could you not be motivated to win the national title? Well, they'll be motivated, but they had that little bit more of an edge against Clemson. Yeah. And, I think Alabama will win. I'm hoping for a good game. I think it will be. But like I said, until I see what takes place, if Fields good enough where he can take a hit, do they have enough defensive linemen? I don't know. I don't think we'll know until after the game gets going. But I think the game has lost a little luster. I don't know if people. If you're an Alabama fan, and we have a lot of them down here, if you're an Alabama fan, you love it, but it does get a little bit, I think, boring at times to kind of see the same two teams. I know LSU was in it last year, and that was different, but Alabama, Ohio State has, and throw Clemson in, those three have been dominating this game for the last 10 years.
You mentioned LSU being in it last year and it being different. The only thing that was different about it is one of those schools is in the state of the Cajuns, and the other one of those schools is in the state of Bama, and all of them are down south. And Clemson is down south. Ohio State's
that's different. They're not different. That's the one.
Yeah, they're the exception.
They are the exception. They are the dominant program.
Yeah,
Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, I think are the three dominant programs in college football.
Yeah, and people try to shoehorn in Notre Dame, but they're really not.
They're not. I mean, they're good, top 10, but they have not threatened any of those three.
No, but also the thing about this game I think that is different is that we just don't have a full body of work for Ohio State, and I think because we don't, that also has kind of tainted how people are viewing their, they just don't have the same feeling about Ohio State this year. As we did last year when they were also good. But the other thing about the game is that, it's just, as you said when we were talking about the NFL just overshadowed it. I forgot the game was tonight until this morning.
I agree.
All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.